Welcome to Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News. I'm Calev Ben-David. Each week we focus on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest here in Israel and in the diaspora, the global Jewish community. And we start with our top 5 items in the Jewish world, presented by Nicole Tzedek. Nicole?
Thanks, Calev. Here are top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Bullets are fired at a Jewish elementary school over the Yom Kippur holiday. It's the second time the Beis Hayamushka Academy for Girls was targeted with gunfire this year. Canadian authorities say they're increasing police presence in the area. American Jewish scientist Gary Ruvkun is named co-winner of the 2024 Nobel Prize for Medicine, along with Victor Ambros, for the discovery of microRNA, which influences gene selection. Ruvkun joins the long list of Jews who make up some 25% of all Nobel winners. A 22-year-long study in Spain of the DNA of Christopher Columbus, taken from remains in his tomb in Seville, has found there are traits compatible with Jewish origin, leading researchers to conclude he was a Sephardic Jew, which confirms longtime theories about the explorer. Lily Ebert, a British Jewish Holocaust survivor who became world famous recounting her experiences in Auschwitz on TikToks produced by great-grandson Dov Foreman, dies at the age of 100. The UK's King Charles praises her extraordinary resilience and courage. And finally, among those attending synagogue on the Yom Kippur holy day is Paul McCartney. While not Jewish himself, the 82-year-old former Beatles star joined his American Jewish wife, Nancy Shevell, at the Círculo Israelita de Santiago Shul in Chile during his latest tour of South America. Now, those are all of the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Calev.
Since taking office last December, Argentina's president, Javier Millei, is leading a political revolution in that South American nation, shifting and even reversing many policies of previous governments going back decades. That includes traditional attitudes towards Israel and the Jews. Millei has built strong ties to the Jewish community, expressed a personal affinity to Judaism, and has emerged as one of, if not the most ardent supporter of the Jewish state among international leaders, even pledging to relocate his country's embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Many credit much of this to the influence of Rabbi Shimon Axel Wanish, a member of Argentina's Moroccan Jewish community who over a decade ago established a close personal friendship with Millei. Indeed, so close that Millei has appointed him as Argentina's ambassador to Israel, making him the first rabbi ever to serve as a top diplomatic envoy to the Jewish state. The depth of their relationship was on display when the two made a visit to Jerusalem's Western Wall Shrine during Millei's visit here last February. Ambassador Rabbi Shimon Axel Wanish, thank you for joining us here on I-24 News. First, let me ask you, what is at the core, the heart of your extraordinary relationship, friendship with President Millei, and by extension, his relationship with the Jewish people?
First, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. I met the president three and a half years ago. He came to give a speech to the youth community about economics and anti-Semitism, and we had a brief conversation that turned into a deep, spiritual discussion unexpectedly about moral values, life principles, and the missions each of us has in the world. That's where the relationship began, and it grew into an increasingly rich and profound connection, filled with study, reflection, and analysis. I believe the president found great value and richness in Jewish wisdom, both for personal life and in general, as positive messages for the world, for a better, more peaceful and harmonious world.
Right. Now, let me ask you, he has totally changed the history of Argentina's relationship with Israel, which has been quite antagonistic for many decades now. How is that being received there in Argentina?
Yes, that's right. Essentially, this is the first time in history that an Argentine president has declared Israel as a strategic ally. Today, the president is stating that the United States and Israel are Argentina's two strategic allies. I believe this is not about a political or an economic alliance between countries, but something much deeper, values of freedom and democracy.
The values of freedom and democracy. Y esos son dos valores que
These are two values we have a lot in common. As Argentinians, we share a lot with the State of Israel. Why? Because we are two countries, two nations, two peoples that defend freedom and democracy. And unfortunately, we are surrounded in our regions by those who threaten that freedom and democracy. Whether it's through dictatorships, terrorism, or social policies that degrade humanity and society. In that sense, there is a deep bond of brotherhood felt between these two nations and peoples, Argentina and Israel.
Now, Argentina, there's a rich Jewish history, the largest Jewish community in South America. Unfortunately, there also has been some anti-Semitic elements, both on the right and left in Argentina. You are the first rabbi ever appointed to be an ambassador to Israel, and from all countries, Argentina. I know there was some opposition from some elements. Talk about how you've been received, how you were received in Argentina when President Millei said, "You are the man I want to be our ambassador to Israel."
En primer lugar, fue para mí un honor y
First of all, for me, it was an honor, a personal privilege to represent my country, to be able to come here to the State of Israel and represent the country where I was born, raised, and educated. It's true that there was a lot of opposition, and as I said earlier, there are people who believe, and I think this is a rather limited and discriminatory mindset, a narrow, hate-filled view, but many people believe that being Jewish, or even worse, being a rabbi, is somehow a disability or a disqualification to serve as an ambassador, especially here in the State of Israel. I believe the opposite. First, discriminating against someone for their faith and religion is a low point, and sadly, many people still think this way, even in the Senate. In the Parliament, there were clearly discriminatory marks on this matter. On the contrary, I feel, believe, and am convinced that my identity as a Jew or as a rabbi is an added asset because I understand the culture. I know how the people here operate. I speak the language, and this gives me the tools to perform my work and mission far more effectively in bringing the benefits from Israel, investments, technology, knowledge, to our country, Argentina.
Now, President Millei did speak about moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Is that something we can expect during your time here as ambassador?
esa es una misión, es una responsabilidad.
This is a mission, a responsibility. Obviously, this was a campaign promise from the president, and he reaffirmed it here during his trip to Israel, that he would move the embassy in support of the State of Israel. The decision has been made. It's an executive decision at the presidential level, and it is final. The question now is when, how, and in what manner. We still don't know, and we're awaiting further instructions. But it's not a short-term action. It's a long-term vision, a goal. We are now figuring out the right moment, the best time to minimize any possible negative side effects for our country, Argentina.
Para nuestro país, Argentina.
Now, this is a remarkable change for Argentina in its relation with Israel, its relation with the Jewish people. But if we look at the rest of South America, it's concerning. Of course, Venezuela, countries like Chile, what's the change in Brazil, even Colombia, which was once a very friendly country to Israel. I mean, what is the future? Do you see Argentina and this being in some ways changed? How concerned are you, should we be, about that? And also the future of the Jewish communities in this country, in these countries.
Sí, esta es una excelente observación. Yo creo que Latinoamérica, lamentablemente.
Yes, that's a great observation. Unfortunately, Latin America has been heavily influenced by extreme ideologies, whether from the far left or from terrorism. And I believe this region has become highly polarized in recent times. In this regard, I see President Javier Millei and Argentina as a beacon for Latin America. I believe he is leading a cultural revolution, a cultural battle. This isn't about politics or commerce. It's about something much deeper, a cultural revolution, a moral battle. In this sense, my hope and wish is that President Javier Milei in Argentina can become a role model, an example for the Latin American region and for the world as well. I repeat, this is not just a political or a commercial issue. It's about being rooted in values of freedom and democracy. And these are the values of my country, Argentina, that we share deeply with the State of Israel.
Ambassador Rabbi Shimon Axelwanish, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you success on your mission, your diplomatic mission here in Israel.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you all.
Israel Bonds is the U.S. underwriter of debt securities issued by the State of Israel, and more important, a primary tool used by diaspora Jewry to help fund the Jewish state in its times of greatest need. Now, during this Jewish high holiday season, which coincides with the one-year anniversary of the October 7 terror attack, Israel Bonds has initiated an Invest for Life campaign to rally global support for Israel. Joining us to talk more about that is the president and CEO of Israel Bonds, Danny Neve. Danny, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Danny, it's now more than 1 year since the terror attack on October 7th. As I mentioned, Israel Bonds has been there for Israel in times of war, but this crisis has gone on longer, has grown wider than even anybody could have anticipated that. How has that impacted on Israel Bonds, on your mission, and how you've had to cope with that?
Well, if you allow me first, it's almost a year that has passed, as you mentioned, and we still struggle to comprehend the unimaginable atrocities committed on October 7th, and we ache for the hostages held in Gaza, to the brave soldiers who sacrificed their life, to the injured soldiers who would bear the scars of the war for the rest of their life. And Israel Bonds, as you have mentioned, for the last 7 decades, our mission is to secure funds for Israel. And we have raised more than $52 billion, ushering Israel into a vibrant startup nation during the years. Yet, since October 7th, our mission has felt more vital, urgent, emotional. And the silver lining is that October 7th has galvanized Israel Bonds supporters around the world like never before.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. How have they responded, and how has Israel Bonds used that help that has been given to Israel during this difficult past year?
On October 7th, on that day itself, we initiated a special campaign to support Israel. And I'm grateful and proud to share with you that since the war broke out, we have raised globally more than $3.6 billion for Israel. And these funds have been an essential lifeline in ensuring Israel's economy resilience. But these are not just financial statements. These are a strong statement of solidarity and support for Israel. And our investors understand that by investing in Israel Bonds, by purchasing bonds, they don't just get strong and steady return, but they build a bond with the State of Israel.
Right. Now let's look forward to you starting this new campaign, Invest for Life. Again, this crisis is going on longer than anyone could have thought. So now bonds, like everything else in this country, has to look forward and be prepared for a longer haul.
Yes, that's right. And as the war continued, we understand that we have to do more, and we can do more for Israel. And this is why we initiated that global campaign, Invest in Life campaign, inviting people to invest at least at least $107 in Israel Bonds. And by that, again, to make a very strong statement to the entire world that they support Israel.
Mm-hmm. Danny, for those who don't know, you have a long career in politics and diplomacy before going to Israel Bonds. You've served at the highest level as a government, as a minister during some of the toughest times for Israel. I'm curious on a personal level how you perceive it now, and also from the position that you now occupy as the CEO of Israel Bonds.
From what I see Israel that has achieved more and more victories against its enemies. And as we all know, the toll is very heavy. And although the heavy toll, like we have seen just during the last few days, very heavy toll, Although that, we see that the Israeli spirit is strong and steadfast and unbreakable. And when people from outside ask me about it, I would tell people, look, people in Israel understand that this is not just a war between Israel and Iran's proxy terrorist organizations. This is an existential war on the right of the Jewish state to exist. This is a war not just for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel, but for the entire civilization, because, you know, for the Iranians, Israel is a little son and the United States is a big one. And if we stand together, I'm sure that our enemies would not prevail. And yet, it's not over. It's far from being over, as it looks right now. The state of Israel still needs us. And getting back to Israel bonds, the best way to make an impact today is by making an investment in Israel bonds and support the state of Israel at this critical time of need.
Right, and we've entered the new Jewish year, of course, for Shana Tova. What's your final message then for those looking ahead and having to contend and deal with so much over the past year and trying to maybe be a little hopeful towards the new year?
It was a very tough year for all of us. You know, probably the darkest days since the Holocaust for the Jewish people. Yet, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we are going to prevail, and the Israelis are strong, and the state of Israel is strong. And it's stronger, much more stronger, thanks to the enormous support that the state of Israel has been receiving from all over, from the Jewish communities around the world and Israel supporters around the world. And I urge each and every one of our viewers, at this time of need, it's important for each and every one of you to support the state of Israel.
Right, and I do think one maybe silver lining, it has brought many Jews across the world in the diaspora closer to Israel.
Yes.
And seeing them as facing a common destiny and reinforcing
That's
that.
right, that's right.
Danny Nevea of Israel Bonds, thank you for joining us
Thank
on
you for having me.
News. Nobody Wants This is the hot new series on Netflix, a romantic comedy set in Los Angeles that debuted last month and has proven so popular, it's already been includes a real-life, self-described hot rabbi, Rabbi Rebecca Karen Jablonski, who wrote in the New York Post that the series depicts its female Jewish characters as, quote, manipulative and overbearing, and also Judaism is, quote, unwelcoming, cerebral, and yet totally arbitrary. Well, we'll speak with Rabbi Jablonski in a moment, but first, here's a bit of Nobody Wants This.
I'm Joanne.
And joining us from New York now is Rabbi Rebecca Karen Eisenstadt Jablonski, a rabbi, Jewish educator, and author. Her new book is Confessions of a Female Rabbi, Relevant Religion in an On-Demand World. And Rabbi Jablonski, thank you for joining us. We'll talk about your book in a minute, but let's first talk about Nobody Wants This. And the one issue that really seems to have riled up many in the Jewish community, the portrayal of its Jewish characters. Your feelings on that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really a delight. Yesterday, we had I-24 on the TV all day, so it's a real pleasure. So first of all, I would just like to say, before we talk about this piece of entertainment, that truly it's been a challenging year for the Jewish people. We're reflecting on it as we just came through the major high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And of course, we're gearing up towards the Hebrew calendar's anniversary of October 7th happening on Simchas Torah. We want happiness in our lives. We want entertainment in our lives. And Jewish people have been focused on tragedies that have unfolded in the Middle East that continue to happen as we still are missing the hostages in Israel. So much of being Jewish right now has been our focus on Israel and the Middle East, and then trying to salvage our holidays and our new year. And this TV show came basically out of nowhere. And to its titles, the many bar mitzvahs that I officiate. So, of course, I had a lot to weigh in.
Right. Let's talk about, as I said before, some in the Jewish community have bristled at the portrayal of the Jewish character, seeing them as less sympathetic to the heroine. But you've also taken issue with the portrayal of the hot rabbi, Noah, who seems to have one general, this is what really a lot of the media has been focusing on. And it's very interesting because you are in a kind of similar space. As a rabbi, it's dealing with a sort of upscale community with, in many cases, couples or families that are mixed communities. So let's talk about that, the portrayal of Noah in this show and your own reality as a rabbi in a very similar milieu.
Absolutely. First of all, I acknowledge that there are some rabbis out there that find love with a partner that is not from the Jewish faith, but the overwhelming majority of rabbis find love by seeing shared values, shared background, and acknowledging that they have a common language with their partner. That is much more common. Furthermore, when with it rabbi in New York to my partner was the fact that we met at a Shabbat dinner, the fact that he wanted to go see Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish, and we both understand Yiddish, grew up in Jewish education spaces, have a breadth of knowledge. One of our dates, we talked ad nauseum about the Lubavitcher Rabbi and the book by Rabbi Telushkin. That, for me, in my experience, is what fed my own romantic story. And so I'm disappointed in the portrayal of rabbis, that they are corrupt. The head rabbi mentions that the way he got his own promotion to head rabbi is through blackmail. The fact that Noah seems to be only caring about introducing Jewish practices like Havdalah to this girl, Joanne, in the series, it's because of his promotion. That's just not the way rabbis work. And unfortunately, most people in the world have never met a Jew, let alone a rabbi.
Let me just answer it, because we should explain this is based on the experiences of its creator, Sarah Foster, who was a non-Jew who converted when she married a Jewish man. Would say this is okay, but this is true to my specific experience, or either people that I spoke to who love the series who say, okay, we're not generalizing. This is one particular couple, one particular rabbi.
Well, okay, that's a complicated statement because they are generalizing. They're generalizing with giant swaths of depiction that Jewish women are annoying, overbearing, they are liars. And they, on that one hand, but yet trying to say that this rabbi is the one anomaly, the one and only Jew who could be vulnerable. But of course, no other Jewish character in the series is really open towards people of other faiths other than this rabbi. Everyone else is completely insular. But also that the story is rooted in truth and a true story for Miss Foster is one thing, but she didn't marry a rabbi. She married somebody who was also lived in LA in the entertainment space. But this portrayal of a character marrying a rabbi, in my opinion, I don't think was shown realistically or really in the real world.
Well, fair enough.
They try and be up to date with text messages and podcasts, but at the same time, the show came out post October 7th, a year later. We don't hear the word Israel ever in this series. And American Jewish people, and frankly, the entire American population is grappling with Jewish identity and Israel, and there's no mention of it.
All right, well, let's see if when the second season comes along, if they will take heed of some of this criticism that has been put out there by yourself and others. Rabbi Rebecca Jablonski, thank you for joining us on
Thank you for having me.
I-24 News.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us this week on Jewish World Weekly.